My name is Kathleen, and I am 31 years old. I thought marriage was about love and teamwork, but lately I feel alone. My husband Patrick and I have been married for a year, but we don't agree on big things. I want to have a baby, but Patrick says we must first save money to build a house. Every time I bring up children, he refuses, saying we need to be financially stable first. It feels like an excuse. I wonder if he really wants a family or if he just wants to keep delaying things. To save money faster, I started working extra hard. I stopped buying things for myself, limited going out, and counted every dollar. But Patrick didn't do the same. He still went out drinking with his coworkers and spent money on things he liked. Yet, he told me to use less hot water and turn off the lights quickly to save money. It felt unfair. Marriage is supposed to be equal, but I was making all the sacrifices. His parents also pressured me about having a baby, but Patrick never defended me. I felt like I was fighting alone. One evening at Patrick's parents' house, I finally had enough. After dinner, he stepped outside for a smoke, and his parents started blaming me. "You're always working. Maybe that's why Patrick doesn't pay attention to you. A good wife should stay home." Their words hurt me deeply. They made it seem like it was my fault we had no children, even though Patrick was the one refusing. I couldn't take it anymore. "If you're so worried, why don't you ask your son instead of blaming me?" I snapped. The room went silent. No one expected me to speak up. I stormed outside, expecting Patrick to notice that I was upset. But there he was, casually smoking like nothing had happened. I got into the car, but he followed. "Are we leaving already?" he asked, acting like everything was normal. That was when I realized he didn't care about my feelings. His parents pressured me, he ignored me, and I was supposed to just accept it. As I started the car, I said, "I'm not visiting your parents anymore." He looked confused. "Why? We save money on food there." That was all he cared about, saving money, not me. Our marriage felt worse every day. Then, 2 months later, my uncle passed away. He had been rich, and I found out I might inherit his money. Patrick's reaction surprised me. "Wow, I didn't know your uncle was that wealthy," he said, suddenly interested. I felt something was wrong. When the lawyer came to talk about the inheritance, I asked Patrick to leave the room. It was my business, not his. For the first time, I had something he couldn't control. I didn't know it yet, but Patrick was already planning something behind my back. 5 months later, Patrick told me he had a surprise for me. He drove me to a big, beautiful house. At first, I was excited. Had he finally thought about what I wanted? But as we parked, his parents stepped outside, smiling. My heart sank. His father said, "Welcome home, Kathleen. You'll be moving in soon." I was confused. Patrick had bought this house without telling me. "You should work on getting along with my mom," Patrick added. I felt sick. He hadn't done this for us. He had done it for them. He never cared about what I wanted. Trying to stay calm, I asked how he paid for the house. His answer shocked me. "Your dad and I put money into it. Our savings are empty, but don't worry." My hands tightened into fists. He had used all our money without asking me. Then he said something worse. "I heard your uncle left you $920,000. You can use that to pay us back." My stomach dropped. He had counted on my inheritance to cover the cost. But he never even asked me first. He had planned everything without me, assuming I'd just agree. I took a deep breath and said, "I renounce the inheritance." Patrick's face froze. "What?" he shouted. "Why would you do that?" I explained that my uncle had big debts. If I took the inheritance, I would have to pay them off. Patrick turned pale. He had spent all our savings, trusting money that wasn't even his. Furious, he pulled out a divorce form from his bag. "If you won't use the money for the house, then let's just get divorced," he said coldly. My hands shook as I took the papers. "Fine," I replied. "Let's do it." Back at our apartment, I filled out the divorce papers. I was done with him. I packed my things and called movers. As I taped the last box, Patrick banged on the door. "I won't accept this divorce," he said angrily. I rolled my eyes. You gave me the papers yourself, I said. He looked desperate now. What about the house? The inheritance? He asked. I shook my head. It was never your money, and that house was never my home. I locked the door, leaving him outside. I was finally free. The next day, I told my coworkers about the divorce. Some had come to my wedding, and I wanted them to know the truth. To my surprise, Patrick showed up at my office. You're ruining my reputation, he hissed. Apparently, people at his job had heard the story, and he felt embarrassed. That's not my problem, I said simply. He had never cared about our marriage, only about how things looked to others. Now he was facing the consequences of his own actions. As I moved forward, something unexpected happened. A coworker, Michael, approached me one day. I've liked you for a long time, he admitted shyly. You deserve someone who truly listens to you. His words took me by surprise. For years, I had been in a marriage where my voice didn't matter. The thought of being with someone who respected me felt strange, but also refreshing. I wasn't sure if I was ready to love again, but for the first time in a long time, I felt seen. Maybe this was the start of something new, something better. Meanwhile, Patrick's life started to crumble. He had quit his job because his coworkers avoided him after hearing about the divorce. His parents, furious about the money lost on the house, turned against him. We spent all our savings for nothing, they scolded him. Patrick had thought he could control everything, our money, my decisions, and even our future. But now he had nothing left. I, on the other hand, was doing better than ever. I had moved into my own place, focused on my career, and surrounded myself with people who truly cared. I finally felt free. One evening, months after our divorce, I received an unexpected call. It was Patrick. Kathleen, I made a mistake, he said. His voice was softer, almost desperate. I regret everything. Can we try again? I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. He didn't love me. He had only lost everything and was now feeling lonely. If he truly cared, he would have fought for our marriage before it was too late. No, Patrick, I replied firmly. I've moved on. You should too. I ended the call, feeling no sadness, only relief. I had finally taken control of my life. Walking away from Patrick was the best decision I had ever made. It wasn't just about ending a bad marriage. It was about choosing myself for the first time. I no longer had to live under someone else's rules or be blamed for things that weren't my fault. I had spent too many years bending for others, but not anymore. Now, I made my own choices. I was no longer a woman who sacrificed everything for someone who didn't appreciate me. I was stronger, wiser, and finally at peace with who I was. I had learned an important lesson. Love isn't about control or sacrifice. It isn't about suffering in silence while the other person gets their way. Love should be a partnership, where both people listen, respect, and support each other. That was something Patrick could never give me. But I had hope. Whether it was with Michael or someone else in the future, I knew I wouldn't settle for less again. I would wait for a love that made me feel valued, not used. I would never let myself be silenced again. As I unpacked the last of my boxes in my new home, I looked around and smiled. This was a new chapter in my life, one that I was writing on my own terms. No controlling husband, no in-laws pressuring me, no endless sacrifices. Just me, building a life that made me happy. My story wasn't over, it was just beginning. And this time, I was in control.